Hi, Shane. Good morning. We actually are doing something a bit different today because we had recorded episode 5 on the 23rd of July.
We did.
But then the market was moving so quickly. By the time the editing was done, everything had changed. Let's start with what actually happened in July.
Right. I think when we last recorded, which I think was episode 4,
Yes.
was towards the end of June.
Correct.
And at that stage, the crude oil price was coming down quite nicely. And we spoke, I think, with a lot of enthusiasm about how we may be going into a lower price period.
Yes.
Unfortunately, when July started, we saw things picking up again in the Middle East, hostilities, and the crude oil price started to go up. Go up in a rather sort of unprecedented way. Although we did see it back when the war started, I think in early March. But we saw in the first 3 weeks of July, the crude oil price increased by something like 40%, cracking $100 a barrel around about the 23rd of July. And then we thought, prices are going to go up because we had a big under recovery. And of course, prices did go up. But before they did, in the last week of July, we saw crude oil prices crash by something like 15%. So it made it very difficult to sort of predict which way things were going to go.
And that is how we end up with like an unaired episode. It will live in prosperity. But
as it should.
The actual numbers, you are 100% correct. It was 40% because at the beginning of July, we were sitting at a beautiful $72 a barrel. By the 14th, it was 85. And then by the 23rd, which is the day we recorded, it was 100. And then an extraordinary reversal within 1 month.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with why this oil price was skyrocketing and around all the straits? Because the unaired episode had such a beautiful name and now no one will know about it.
Yeah. Look, everybody knows the Strait of Hormuz.
Correct.
Okay, I think it's really common knowledge these days. Everybody understands that the Strait of Hormuz takes you out of the Persian Gulf if you're a ship into, I think, the Gulf of Oman, into the Indian Ocean. Okay? And people understand, I think, these days that Qatar, Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, all those countries produce, obviously, crude oil, finished product that needs to be shipped through the Strait of Hormuz. And when the conflict picks up in the Middle East, obviously it creates a choke point. So the waterway becomes a choke point or a bottleneck. And that leads to issues, and we see the oil prices rising as a result. But what we also saw in July was a lot of news about what the Houthis were doing in Yemen.
Yes.
Now, they located near something called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So we have a new strait in town. Okay.
Woo-hoo.
Now, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait takes you out of the Red Sea, if you are shipping, into, I think it's the Gulf of Aden, which then leads to the east. Okay?
Yes. Then you go that way.
And interestingly enough, the Bab el-Mandeb is actually at its narrowest point 10 kilometers narrower than the Strait of Hormuz. If you want to find it on the map, easiest place to check is where Ethiopia is in Africa. But actually, Bab el-Mandeb is adjacent to Djibouti and Eritrea.
Yes.
And of course, on the other side of the waterway is Yemen. And the reason it's so important is because a while back, the Saudis built a pipeline called the East to West pipeline because they sort of anticipated that if there was problems in the Strait of Hormuz, they could take the oil across Saudi Arabia from east to west and from a port in the Red Sea, then take the product to the east via Bab el-Mandeb. And with the trouble, and the Saudis started to do that a few months back. And with the trouble that we're seeing in that area now, obviously we have these two waterways becoming two choke points and creating all kinds of trouble and driving up the crude oil price.
Exactly. That was very much what happened. And just for clarity, finished products and oil get shipped out of those. And yes, it is necessary. And yes, it influences all of us, even way down here at the bottom in South Africa. Yeah. But then what we were saying as well, and I have to pick this up because I love this point, and you actually once again taught me something. If they can't get out through those avenues, let me call them avenues or straits, they would have to go via the Cape of Good Hope. right? And I said very convincingly, but isn't that good for us? And you were like, no. Just tell us why that isn't a good thing, or why it doesn't matter that they literally sail by.
Look, I think the first thing to consider is if you can't get out of Bab el-Mandeb through out of the Red Sea via that port, you have to go via Suez. And Suez also has its own restrictions. But if you go via Suez, if you look at the map, you have to go all the way around the west coast of Africa in order to get to the east, to places like China. So it adds a tremendous amount of cost, and obviously it adds a tremendous amount of additional time. And those ships don't stop at the Cape of Good Hope. They generally sail by. Some of them are so big, the VLCCs, anyway, they wouldn't be able to berth at the Cape. So it's not like we get any kind of, we derive any kind of benefit out of that.
Yeah, that was, I love learning something new so early in the morning. But so that's good to know. And I think it's, if I just automatically assumed that it could benefit us, other people would have as well, or maybe I'm the lone ranger there. But if we pull all of this back from the oil price and from the Straits, we want to look at what was actually happening throughout the month with the daily movements, right? Yeah. Do you feel like telling me exactly what we were seeing and what we were actually anticipating in July? Because we had some predictions and they actually are pretty accurate, but let's just cover what happened.
We were hoping for prices to go down over time, and we spoke about that. But we also spoke about the caveats. So all caveats observed, we thought maybe we were heading for peacetime or for a more peaceful time and for pricing to go down a bit. Naturally, the prices went up on the back of the conflict in the Middle East that picked up, US strikes on Iran, etc. And because the oil price increased as much as it did for as long as it did in July, up until about the 23rd,
correct,
even though it came down afterwards, it didn't come down enough to prevent a price increase into August. So we saw a price increase on diesel in August, and we saw a price decrease on petrol into August.
So just for the viewers, we were, because I have the actual numbers in front of me because I wouldn't remember them, we were thinking that we were always going to say that petrol was going to decrease.
Yeah.
And that did come to fruition. I'm going to just get petrol out of the way quickly. It kind of did, because it was what I'm going to call neutral, right? Yes. And we're not going to talk about the Slate yet, but the Slate came into play, and that's how we ended up with a final decrease.
Correct.
But for prosperity of this podcast, we're going to say that petrol ended out as neutral July. However, the fun part was the diesel, which was sitting at around roughly 89 cents when we did this wonderful unaired episode. The thing that was pushing us towards our prediction of, would you like to say the number? What we predicted at? We were saying 2 Rand, by the way.
We were.
The reason we were saying that there was such a massive increase was because we were looking at an under recovery that was sitting at around 5 Rand 40 cents.
Correct.
Tell me about that, how we were looking at that and where we were, just explain.
Look, I think in simple terms, we were supposed to get something like a 1 Rand 75 cents a litre, a 1 Rand 75 price increase on diesel. We ended up with a lower price increase on diesel as a result of a reduction in the Slate levy.
There we go.
And the reduction in the Slate levy was based on what happened in June. And it felt a little bit counterintuitive because the oil prices were rising so sharply in July. So you wouldn't expect a reduction in the Slate levy on the back of that. The reduction in the Slate levy also, by the way, took your neutral on petrol and created a price decrease, which I think was always welcome. But I think the bad news is that considering what's happened in July, the Slate levy will have to be looked at again, and this time perhaps
needs to go the other way.
It's not going to favor the consumer.
That's the thing. That's the magic almost of the Slate. But yeah, so our prediction was sitting at around 2 Rand. It technically closed, the diesel now specifically closed at 1 Rand 76. And then the Slate brought it down to 1 Rand 23, which is what the increase will be come midnight. On
effective August.
Yeah, effective August. Thank you. I was like, my dates got scrambled there. And that's how we ended up seeing the actual decrease in petrol. But the slate is an interesting thing. And I was trying to figure out the rules of engagement around the slate. Can you give me a very high-level overview of the slate going toward basically in favor of the consumers or in favor of the majors?
I think we spoke about this in a previous video.
We did.
So the slate is there to take care of sort of the cash flow impact that importers have to withstand by bringing in product at current month pricing, where the current month pricing is actually set against the previous month's pricing, something we refer to as M-1. And there's a band that the slate balance needs to stay within, positive 500 million rand or minus 500 million rand. So if it stays in that band, generally there's no adjustment. If it moves out of the band, then there's an adjustment, either positive or negative, to make sure that importers are kept whole in terms of any difference that they have to withstand because they're buying at current month pricing, but the market is at the previous month's price, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think that is that is my lesson from July, that the fuel price forecast that we look at is very much a dated snapshot. It is dated and not the final number.
Sure.
And this is why it's so important that we follow the review period every single day and take in all these different, I don't even know what to call them, these different elements that influence our pricing. So I'm happy still that we had that snapshot, but it's not the final one. And this is what makes it so difficult, because when we were saying prior to starting recording, can you just imagine being a fuel trader, an oil trader, an insurance premium person,
a motorist? It's not fun. It's not fun. The issue is the rate of change.
Exactly.
Is the real problem. You know, it's one thing if fuel prices, for example, go up over time, over 6 months or over 12 months, and people can sort of adjust to that or plan for that. It's another thing when you're having a 40% increase in the crude oil price over a 3-week period, and then a 15% decrease, in the following week. It creates havoc when it comes to trying to understand whether the price is going up or the price is going down. And as a result for that, people struggle to plan. Whether you're a trader, whether you're a consumer, whether you're a motorist, whether you're a business. And I think all businesses want predictability more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, we're living in a world, in a time, in a country where a lot of that is absent. And as a result, it's becoming a really difficult terrain to sort of navigate through.
Because at the end of the day, even we have to draw a line. You have to draw a line and decide this is the path that we're going to go on. And in any industry, be it ours or just for products, milk, whatever, a line has to be drawn and the pricing will get passed one way or another. And it feels like we're going to sit with some type of fluctuations. So I'm not sure when. So I guess my question is, which I love asking, how do you feel about August?
Yeah, so I don't have a cooking clue how August is going to shake out. What we know is that there's a big under-recovery that we are starting August with. On diesel, it's north of 4 Rand. On petrol, there's an under-recovery as well. So if things hold where they are, the Rand-dollar exchange rate holds, if crude oil prices holds where it currently is, which is at around $85 a barrel when I last checked this morning.
It was.
And if the level of conflict in the Middle East sort of holds in terms of where it is now, we're going to see big price increases into September, both in terms of diesel, much bigger, petrol not so much, but also a price increase, unfortunately. And with the way we are sort of seeing things in the Middle East, I mean, right now Trump and the US are claiming that negotiations are taking place and there should be some kind of resolution. Iran is saying they're busy talking to Oman more than talking to the US and that negotiations are not taking place. And so we don't know what the next few days will hold. But what we do know is if the conflict increases, the conflict level increases, the oil price will go up. And if the oil price goes up, because our pricing mechanism in South Africa is largely based on the crude oil price and, of course, the Rand-dollar exchange rate, the price of fuel in South Africa will go up, and that's not good for the South African economy.
I think that is it. Let's leave it at the facts, because those are very much the facts as of today. What we are going to do is do our thing where we watch it daily, and at some point during this month, we will draw a line and we will re-record and see where, or not re-record, we will record our next episode of Flashpoint, where we have some type of a more firm outlook into September. But that is what we're going to call the recap of July and the beginning of August.
And between now and then, anything can happen.
Anything. Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, Christel.